Good afternoon. I'm Susan Kelly, president of the club. Welcome to City Club and another special program, this time focusing on the increasing problem of obesity among our youth. Our guest speakers today are Oregon State epidemiologist Mel Kohn and Gary DeStefano, president of USA Operations for Nike. On Tuesday, January 28th, our new leaders group will meet for a social event at 6:30 at the Lucky Lab. New leaders, co-chairs, and cell members will be on hand to answer questions. There is no program, but it's an opportunity for everyone to come and get to know each other and enjoy this new organization. On Friday, January 31st, join us for a program which will examine the likelihood of a second growth of the high-tech Silicon Forest. Here to address the subject will be Sharon Van Sickle, senior partner with Fleischman Hilliard, David Chen of OVP Venture Partners, and Jim Johnson, former vice president and Oregon site manager for Intel. And that program will be here at the MAC. Today I get to welcome a very special family member. Zeri Santner has just been appointed director of Portland Parks and Recreation to replace Charles Jordan. And we are so excited that she will be serving this community in such a capacity. Welcome, Zeri. I know that there's many other guests here today. Welcome to all of you, and please consider joining City Club. Remember to vote if you haven't already before January 28th. As you know, the City Club has completed a ballot measure study of the measure, and membership has voted nearly unanimously to support recommendation to vote yes. Copies of that report are available at the back of the room. So please mail those ballots or walk them in. Jog them in. Our member host today is Megan Steele, a member of the program committee. She will ask the first question of our speakers. Following Megan's question, we'll open the program to questions from City Club members in the audience. Please line up behind the microphone before Megan is finished so that we can avoid the lag time between questions and have enough time to hear lots of questions. Limit your question to 30 seconds. I'd also remind you that we want questions from our speakers for our speakers rather than statements or opinions from the floor. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from Pope & Talbot, Weyerhaeuser Company Foundation, and Pacific Core. We are very grateful for their support. Dr. Mel Kohn is a native of New York City. He received a bachelor's degree, cum laude, in Russian and Eastern European Studies from Yale, did his pre-medical coursework at Columbia, received his MD from Harvard and his master's in public health and epidemiology from Tulane. Dr. Kohn completed his residency in pediatrics at Boston Children's Hospital and is a board-certified pediatrician. In his current job, Dr. Kohn oversees the Office of Disease Prevention and Epidemiology in the Department of Human Services here in the state of Oregon. There are over 200 staff working in this area and in the public health programs related to communicable diseases, injury prevention, environmental health, and chronic disease. His wife, Sarah, is here today. Welcome, Sarah, and they have 2 children. Gary DeStefano, I can't say that right. DeStefano is also from the East Coast and was born and raised in New Hampshire. He has a BS from the University of New Hampshire and an MBA from New Hampshire College. He's been with Nike since 1982, beginning as a customer service area manager. He's risen through the ranks to vice president, now responsible for Nike footwear, apparel, and equipment business for the whole U.S. region. He is also responsible for all strategic, brand, product, and operational initiatives for Nike branded business. Gary lives with his wife and 2 children in Lake Oswego, where they actively participate in Northwest outdoor sports. Welcome, and Bill, starting.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see so many people here today. I want to thank the City Club for giving me the opportunity to speak with you about what's really an enormous emerging issue in public health, and that is the staggering growth in obesity in our state. To many, obesity is a cosmetic issue, but in truth, it's an enormous and growing public health problem. In public health, we generally consider tobacco to be the leading preventable cause of death and disability in the United States. Tobacco causes about 400,000 deaths in the U.S. each year. By comparison, obesity is estimated to cause about 300,000 deaths each year and is now considered the second leading preventable cause of death, right behind tobacco. In 2002, the annual direct medical care cost of obesity-related illness in the United States was about $60 billion, and this accounts for almost 10% of U.S. healthcare expenditures. And of course, these ways of measuring health impact really don't begin to take into account the lost economic productivity of those ill with obesity-related illnesses, nor do they include the everyday pain and suffering that people with those illnesses also experience. Now, obesity among adults is not only a big problem, it's a growing one as well, if you pardon the pun. Since 1980, obesity among adults in the United States has doubled. This increase in obesity threatens to wipe out many of the gains we've made in preventing a variety of chronic diseases, including heart disease and stroke, as well as certain types of cancer and several other chronic health problems. Now, perhaps you're saying to yourself that this is Oregon and things look different here. Well, things do look different here, but I'm sorry to say, not in the way you might like them to. Oregon has the distinction of being the first state in the West to have more than 20% of its adults report that they are obese. That's more than 1 out of 5 Oregonians. Now, while I want you to understand the magnitude of the obesity problem here overall, I'm really here to talk about a sub-epidemic, if you will, a small part of this epidemic, and that's the problem of obesity and overweight among our youth. This sub-epidemic is particularly ominous, I think, because of what it portends for the future. Moreover, this epidemic of obesity is still in its infancy, and if we respond vigorously now, we can still prevent many of the most serious consequences of this epidemic from darkening our future and our children's future. But before I go on to talk about overweight youth, I want to say a word about science, a little bit about the measurement of overweight and obesity. In adults, overweight and obesity are generally measured using a statistic called the body mass index, or BMI. BMI is equal to a person's weight in kilograms divided by their height squared. Now, notice that the BMI isn't just a measure of weight, but one which compares that weight to a person's height. So that, for example, if someone weighed 190 pounds and they were 5 feet tall, they would probably be considered obese by any of us. On the other hand, if they were 6'2" and weighed 190 pounds, that would probably be pretty close to their ideal body weight. Now, the World Health Organization defines a BMI of 30 or greater as obese for both men and women. For children, the issue is a little more complex because, of course, they're growing and because there are marked differences by gender. However, there are norms for BMI among children, and most research in the field defines children with a BMI above the 95th percentile as overweight. So these are the definitions I'll be using throughout this talk. Incidentally, what I did with that sheet of paper. In the back of the room is a BMI chart that you should feel free to pick up on your way out, and you can see where your personal BMI lands. You don't have to tell anybody, but it's back there on the table for you. Okay, so back to youth obesity. Now, while obesity among U.S. adults has doubled since 1980, overweight among children 6 to 11 years old has also nearly doubled, going from 7% to 13%. Among adolescents, the rate of overweight has nearly tripled in that same time period, going from 5% to 14%. Currently, there are an estimated 9 million U.S. youth who are overweight. Data from Oregon show that in 2001, 10% of 8th graders and 7% of 11th graders report their weight as being overweight. Now, this risk, of course, is not distributed equally through the population. Childhood obesity has risen about twice as fast among Black and Hispanic youth compared with their white counterparts. And this exacerbates many other existing racial and ethnic health disparities. Overweight puts our youth at risk for a variety of health problems. One of the most concerning is type 2 diabetes, which is closely linked with obesity. Now, when I was in medical school, which despite some of my gray hair wasn't that long ago, type 2 diabetes was almost entirely a disease of adults. And as a pediatrician, this was really not something that I was taught to take care of very much. In fact, it was generally referred to as, quote, adult onset diabetes. And this was to distinguish it from type 1 diabetes, which is a disease that often strikes young people, but really can strike at any age. Today, type 2 diabetes accounts for as much as half of the new diagnoses of diabetes in certain pediatric populations. Type 2 diabetes carries with it the risk for some of the most serious complications of diabetes, and these include heart disease, stroke, limb amputation, kidney failure, and blindness. It is not a benign disease. Now, overweight youth are also at risk for a variety of other health problems. In the short term, asthma and sleep apnea are associated with overweight and can have a major impact on a child's life. There are also substantial psychological and social consequences of childhood obesity. Obese children are often stigmatized. They're viewed as lazy, unhygienic, socially inept, and academically unsuccessful. Among adolescents who are already self-conscious about their changing bodies, this negative self-image can put them at risk for depression and a variety of high-risk behaviors such as drug use, unsafe sexual activity, eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa, and even suicidal behaviors. Youth obesity also has the potential to cause serious health effects in the long term. In part, this is because 70 to 80% of obese adolescents remain obese as adults. And this puts them at risk for a variety of diseases that take a much longer time to develop, such as certain kinds of heart disease, stroke, and degenerative joint diseases. Several recent studies provide evidence that those who are obese as young adults live substantially shorter than their non-obese counterparts. Well, by now, I hope I've convinced you that youth obesity is a very serious emerging public health problem. And now I'd like to talk about why we're seeing this epidemic, and most importantly, what it is that we, and I mean we, all of you together with me, can do about it. Boiled down to the bare bones, if you'll allow me to use a food metaphor, obesity is the result of an imbalance between energy intake, that is how many calories somebody eats, and energy expenditure, and that is how many calories someone burns up with physical activity. Over time, even a small imbalance between calorie intake and activity adds up. To give you a sense of what I mean, consider this. Eating just 120 calories a day extra, which would correspond to just 12 potato chips, or 10 ounces of cola, or just one Reese's peanut butter cup, would add 1 pound of body fat each month. On the energy expenditure side, 30 minutes of brisk walking would expend just about that extra 150 calories. So unless you're adding 30 minutes of brisk walking to your day to work off those extra 12 potato chips or that extra Reese's peanut butter cup you're eating, you're going to be putting on weight. And if you don't already know from your own experience, I think with this example, you can really understand how easy it is and how slowly this problem builds. Data about Oregon youth support the notion that lack of physical activity is a problem here. Only 37% of 8th graders report participating in moderate physical activity at least 5 times a week, which is the minimum level of physical activity that's recommended by the U.S. Surgeon General. That's the minimum. Only 47% of Oregon 8th graders report attending PE class daily, and by 11th grade, that percentage has fallen down to less than 20%. 52% of these students also report watching 2 or more hours of TV on school days. And research has shown that watching TV is not only time that you're not physically active, but it's also associated with the consumption of high-calorie snack foods and viewing ads for those snack foods, further compounding the risk for becoming overweight. Now, while individual choices and these choices made about eating and exercise are the ultimate cause of obesity for individuals, it would be a great mistake to view this obesity epidemic as fundamentally due to individual choices. After all, people have not become inherently more gluttonous or lazy in the last 20 years. Those very human failings have been with us since the very beginning of humankind. Instead, what's changed is our environment, and those changes that support and constrain the individual decisions that we make. Many opportunities for physical activity have simply been engineered out of our lives. So if we're going to stop this epidemic of obesity, we need to address those changes in our environment. In public health, we've learned a great deal about how to change environments to support healthy choices from our work in preventing tobacco addiction. What we've learned from tobacco prevention is that in order to effect meaningful change, a comprehensive approach is necessary. Most smokers don't stop smoking simply because their doctor tells them that smoking is bad for their health. However, when they hear that same message from their friends and their loved ones, when their workplace doesn't permit them to smoke, when the media messages that they see support the idea that smoking is unhealthy and harms both the smoker and those exposed to secondhand smoke, when buying cigarettes eats up an increasing proportion of their disposable income. In short, when multiple cues and messages in their environment support a choice to quit smoking, then they have a real likelihood of doing so. We need a similar comprehensive approach to preventing youth obesity, one that addresses our youth's environment so that it supports healthy eating and physical activity frequently and in multiple ways. So what are the cues in the environment that we need to make sure are in place in order to support and reinforce the right messages about healthy eating and physical activity for our youth? At home, time needs to be set aside for healthy eating and for physical activity, and these should not be precluded by excessive television viewing or computer use. At school, physical education needs to be a key part of the curriculum, and I recognize that this is a challenge as we cope with shrinking school budgets and other pressures on the curriculum. High-calorie foods such as soft drinks and candy shouldn't be easily available in school and displacing other healthier food choices. In our communities, we need to make sure that safe and attractive places are available in which we can be physically active. Sidewalks, bike paths, parks, playgrounds, and pedestrian zones all help us make the choice to be physically active. We need to build our communities to take these needs into account, instead of building our communities so that we have no choice but to drive everywhere. Now, research has shown over and over again that in order to sustain behavior changes, we must find ways to incorporate them into daily activities. Anyone who's ever made a New Year's resolution appreciates this. The Surgeon General recommends at least 30 minutes of moderate physical activity, at least 5 days a week. The keys here are the concepts that the activity should be done daily, and that even moderate activity can make an enormous difference. So every child does not need to become a superstar athlete. It's enough to make a difference if we just incorporate a moderate amount of physical activity into our and our children's daily routines. Now let's take a concrete example. Those of you in the audience with school-age children, if you could please raise your hands. Okay. Now, keep your hands up, but keep them up only if you walked your children to school today. Oh my goodness, not a one. Ah, that's right. No school today. Okay, if you walked your children to school yesterday, how's that? Still not a one. Okay, well, walking your children to school is a really simple way to incorporate physical activity not only into your children's day, but into your day as well. And for many of you whose children did not walk or bike to school, perhaps the distance to school or the lack of safe routes to school deters you. But those obstacles didn't just happen to be there. They were conscious choices that were made when our communities were designed, choices that could be changed were the promotion of physical activity a priority for all of us. For youth, parents play an important role in determining that environment that our youth grow up in at least two ways. They not only set the rules for youth behavior, determining, say, what foods get brought into the house or how much TV time is allowed, they're also important role models. For teens in particular, we all know that Do as I say, not as I do, is a sure way to get your kids to disobey you. Therefore, the youth and adult obesity epidemics are tightly intertwined, and we can't address the problem of youth obesity effectively without addressing adult obesity as well. We've learned the hard way in tobacco prevention that programs that are aimed solely at changing youth behavior are effective only when they occur in a context that also addresses the problem for all age groups. Now, for public health, this issue is a relatively new frontier for us, but we are stepping up to the plate, and I think with some innovative new programs and ideas. And I see that Lillian Shirley is here, who's the director of the Multnomah County Health Department, and Wendy Rankin, who is the chronic disease manager also at Multnomah County. The county has really been in the forefront and really stepped up to the plate on this, and I just want to mention one activity of the many that they're involved in. They've been working with the Department of Environmental Quality to promote the idea of what they're calling walking school buses in Portland. And these buses are really just a group of adults who walk along designated routes and pick up and drop off kids on their way to school. Now, these buses will be driven, if you will, by senior citizen volunteers. So through this program, children not only have the opportunity to be more physically active, they can practice safe pedestrian skills and learn more about their neighborhoods. And not only that, but the physical activity is good for the senior citizen volunteers as well. It's really a wonderful cross-generational kind of idea. Now, I mentioned that Multnomah County is working on this project in partnership with another agency. I think this brings up the idea that making the environmental changes that are needed to support physical activity is not easy. It requires a great deal of political will and the varied skill of many people, and it takes time. This isn't going to change overnight. Another lesson we've learned from tobacco prevention is the value of partnerships in making these things happen. This is a problem that requires mobilization of all sectors of the community. We in public health have been working with the Oregon Coalition for Promoting Physical Activity and the Nutrition Council of Oregon for several years. On February 11th, these two groups will be launching their statewide nutrition and physical activity plans with a day-long event at the Oregon Convention Center. There'll be keynote speakers, including Dr. Bill Dietz, who's an expert on obesity prevention from the Centers for Disease Control. And there will also be workshops where you can learn about new programs and ideas related to obesity prevention. In the back of the room on the table there, again on your way out, we do have some flyers with more details about the event, so please pick up a flyer on your way out and come yourself or pass it on to others who you think might be interested. So in closing, I'd like to challenge each of you today to think about how you can contribute your skills and expertise to helping Oregon find a solution to the growing problem of youth obesity. Our next speaker from Nike, Gary DeStefano, is a great example of this. I mean, I think it's terrific, really, that Nike has, as a prominent member of Oregon's business community, has stepped up to the plate to try to help us address this problem among our youth. So, Gary, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know about all of you, but it's not very often that I have the opportunity to follow an epidemiologist on the podium. So, congratulations, Dr. Kohn. This is really a success in the sense of getting people together from such disparate backgrounds and work focus to come together, and for Mel to take time out of his day to come here and present to all of us is really a tribute to him. So, Dr. Kohn, thank you. It truly was an excellent presentation, and it's a great synopsis of the epidemic that faces us today. Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "A man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, seldom regains its original shape." And I'm certain today that none of us will see obesity in quite the same way again. I'm also sure I was invited here because of my position. My position is I'm president of Nike's USA operations. More importantly, is why I chose to be here today, is because I care. I'm a husband. My wife was actually at a teacher conference today. That's why she's not here. I'm a father of a 12 and 14-year-old. As Dr. Kohn has said, whether we like it or not, we are role models for our children. I'm trained as an educator. My undergraduate degree is in physical education, so I know we have the tools to make a difference for children. I am an influencer. I can use my position, my powers of persuasion, and the company that I work for to make a difference for these children. Most importantly, why are you here today? This is a, Susan, thank you, fantastic turnout, but probably for the same reasons. You care. The fact that you came today does put you in a class by yourself. Our greatest challenge in this issue and many other issues are apathy and ignorance. In a recent poll of Oregonians who were asked if ignorance or apathy were the cause of the problem, the overwhelming response was, I do not know and I do not care. Just kidding. The really good news is we actually do live in a state that cares, which is why this is so surprising. In a recent poll, 83% of Portlanders thought lack of exercise and physical activity was a very important issue for the city. The scale and the problem of obesity and inactivity can be overwhelming. The governor said in his inaugural address regarding our economy, we do not face a gathering storm. It is already here, and it's not going to go away on its own. Now, one of the things we often do at Nike when we have a really insurmountable problem is instead of trying to solve the problem, we look at it in reverse. So, what if we did that today? Instead of attempting to make people healthy and fit, what if our mission was to make people obese and sick? Well, we could start off with every food sitting they have every day and supersize every meal they have. We could create a diet high in calories and low in nutritional content. We could make it cheap. We could make it readily available. We could mass market it. We could target it to youth. We could hook them for generations. We could take away recess and physical education in school so that children would sit the entire day without physical activity. We could create some compelling form of entertainment that would be so interesting and interactive that kids, when they came home, would never go out to play. We could make sports more expensive or simply take it away altogether and not provide the opportunity to participate. We could design communities and a society where people do not walk anywhere. They simply get in some form of motorized transportation that takes them from point to point. If we could do this, we could create the most sedentary and obese society in history. And we could have hooked people for generations. It's a fantastic marketing plan for creating a society that would have all the tools to self-destruct from either illness or the cost of caring for those people. Does this sound familiar? As Dr. Kohn has clearly showed you, this is a crisis. In fact, we know today, as he mentioned, over 300,000 people a year are killed due to inactivity, obesity, and related diseases. That's more people killed each year than are killed by HIV, drugs, and guns. Now, for some good news. You ready for the good news? The good news, exactly. The good news and a discussion of some solution and action. The good news is that we, our society, are starting to recognize. You can't help pick up a USA Today, yesterday's front page. USA Today was all about this issue. We are starting to make a difference, and we are starting to create awareness about this problem. The most significant step are people such as you, influentials, coming together to have a discussion, to care, and to become involved. In his best-selling book, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell looks at why major changes happen in society and why they seemingly happen so quickly. His thesis is that ideas, behaviors, and messages often spread in a manner similar to infectious disease. They are social epidemics, and at the moment when they reach their zenith, they have reached the tipping point. And that's where you and I can make a difference. Working on this issue, we've met new people, we've made unlikely partnerships, we've gained insights into the young community, we've gained credibility with key stakeholders, and we are making a real difference. We know we have the energy and the creativity to create this tipping point. We have a tipping point that changes from apathy to awareness to activity. The benefits of play cannot be disputed. Activity benefits children physically, mentally, and socially. It helps reduce anxiety, stress, and increases their capacity for learning. Not only are sports and physical movement fun, they are also instructive. They teach us how to work together as a society. In fact, 76% of all children who participate in sport talk of forming a friendship with someone from another racial or ethnic group. Nelson Mandela has said of sport, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. Sport can create hope where there was once only despair. As a sports and fitness company doing business all over the world, we've been very concerned about this issue and have spent a great deal of time over the past 12 months talking to experts about the root causes and potential cures. What we've been told is this issue is not just about sport. This issue is not competitive sports. It's about physical activity. It has to be broader. It must be inclusive. As our co-founder and former track coach at the University of Oregon says, if you have a body, you're an athlete. We must approach it from that aspect. But at the state level, Oregon is facing many critical issues, and physical inactivity is only one of them. That is why we believe it's so important for us, both individually and us as Nike, to become involved. So what are we going to do, and when are we going to do it? Last year, we changed the mission statement of the company, one that was fairly internally focused to be the world's leading sports and fitness company, to something that's much more inclusive. The new mission statement is to provide innovation and inspiration for every athlete in the world. And as you know, athlete is defined as if you have a body, you're an athlete. Our aspiration is to inspire young people to play and to participate. So this fall, we have kicked off Nike Go, a program to increase physical activity in youth across America. The first part of that program is an after-school program. This year, Nike Go will be in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. In 16 cities across the country, we'll award 32 grants of $50,000 each. Each Go grant is specifically selected to increase activity for current and new members. The great thing about those grants is they are written by and they are written for kids. Today, I'm happy to announce the 3 Portland area winners of this year's Go grants. To the Waddles Boys and Girls Club, a $50,000 cash grant, product for bike, swim, and program. To the Blazers Boys and Girls Club, a $50,000 grant to the Fit for Life Challenge. And to the North Portland Boys and Girls Club, $50,000 grant, the Girls Volleyball League. The people who just rose are the local directors of the Boys and Girls Club, Nicole Croft, Willie Fuller, and Mike Zizuski. And I believe, actually, do you have some children with you today? No children today? But we would have loved to recognize the children, because truly one of the great things is to have the kids take the initiative to write these grants and be part of this process is really one of the things we believe will be successful. I have to say how impressed we've been working with the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you. Been very resourceful as a staff, and it's a great organization. We're proud to continue our partnership with you, so thank you. In addition to these Go grants, we have also established a Nike Go Fund, and you're probably more aware of that. The purpose of that fund is to install and upgrade and refurbish sports courts and facilities across this country. We launched the fund last year in Portland, our hometown, and focused all of last year's giving actually in Portland. We refurbished over 90 outdoor basketball parks and 35 metropolitan area parks with a world-class surface, an environmentally friendly surface made from recycled athletic shoes. Our employee, thank you. Nice to see our friend, actually Mr. Bob Scholes. Where's Bob? He's here. He actually had to do all the work. Mr. John Leckus, if we want to talk about an individual who can make a difference, John actually contacted us last year on that program. So the power of one does actually work. So John, thank you. Our employees are also critical to this program. Last year alone, our employee volunteers hours in service to this community logged over 52,000 hours. We're very proud of that. To encourage that activism in our employees, we have extended our matching gift program on a 2-for-1 basis to employees who give time or money to nonprofit organizations that help kids become more active. In closing, we just simply say our call to action to you is to become involved. Please remember that money is not the most valuable asset that we or you have to give. Time, people, and ideas are much more important than money. By reaching out to partners in corporate, educational, nonprofit, and government arenas, we will create change that enables kids to become active and stay active. I would again like to thank the City Club for sponsoring today's program. I would like to thank my Nike colleagues, many of which who came today. I don't know if it was get out of their work or hear us speak, but they came today anyway. A special thanks to Lee Weinstein, who actually got all of us together and pulled this program together. So Lee, congratulations, thank you. My thanks again to Dr. Kohn. When you look at people's schedules, when you actually read through in terms of the charge of his job, in terms of the different tasks that he is faced with, to actually take the time to come today and come to Portland and be here with us for this program says quite a bit. And I know I'm in much better hands as a citizen of the state. So thank you, Dr. Kohn. And lastly, I want to thank each one of you and each and every one of you for making the individual choice to come and participate today. The fact that you simply came, the fact that you came here today, made today a success. Thank you.
Thank you. In recent months, the press has highlighted the fact that Oregon has one of the highest percentages of families living in hunger in the country. And it's apparently ironic that we also have one of the highest rates of youth obesity. I'd like to ask our speakers to discuss this link between hunger and obesity and give us their perspectives on what we could do to use existing resources and programs to reduce this problem.
I'll take a stab at that one. The hunger problem in our state is also an enormous problem. And, you know, on the surface, it may seem as if these two things are contradictory, right? If people aren't eating, then why are people so fat? But in fact, I think there's some good research out there that shows that when people are food insecure, which is really what the statistics about hunger measures, that means that they don't know where their next meal is coming from, that this greatly disturbs their eating habits so that they might eat foods that they would otherwise not want to eat, or they might eat a large amount of food because they don't know when they're going to next have an opportunity to eat. So really, I think the hunger problem is an issue that needs to be solved and is probably intertwined with the obesity problem that we're seeing.
The hunger is actually, I think, those two issues are interesting in terms of how we spend our time and our energy. We think we can make a particular difference as a company and great expertise on the activity side. So we're focusing our programs on activity because we think we really can create a massive awareness around activity. The flip side to that is we are getting people involved in the hunger issue. So we have people on the board of directors at the Oregon Food Bank here and through our employees reaching out to the hunger people that have the needs here in the state of Oregon. So we think obviously both of these things are such complex issues, but our real challenge is how can we get involved and make a difference. And I think our employee matching gift program is making a huge difference there. And on the statewide level, it's certainly going to be a task.
Katie? Katie King, City Club member, and my first question is for Gary DeStefano. I don't know of too many world-class athletes that smoke or use tobacco products. And I'm wondering if Nike has considered some sort of ad campaign encouraging young people to quit using tobacco and to get active at the same time.
We actually have a world-class athlete with us today. Alberto Salazar is actually here in the room, right down here in front. Alberto, raise your hand. We have actually, I think, again, one of the things we can bring to the debates is we can use our communication platforms to create interest and create this connection and create awareness and, more importantly, hopefully create a difference. We have done that on a number of issues. If you think back to our campaigns, we ran maybe 7 years ago an advertisement with an HIV runner to make a difference and show the potential that people really have. We ran a campaign about women's sports, I don't know if you remember it, called If You Let Me Play, which was a very powerful campaign. So we do think we can play a role in the debate by using our commercials, and we continue to try to do that. We think we're at our best when we're real about an issue and we have a point of view, so we'll continue to do that.
That's super. It's exciting to see you up here with Dr. Kohn, and it would be exciting to see public health and the corporate world working together on these issues.
We enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Deb Andrews, City Club member. My question is for Dr. Kohn. I want to thank you both for coming today on this issue. Is the issue of better nutrition and healthy eating being addressed in the school lunch program?
I suspect you know the answer to that question.
I had lunch with my son many times at school.
This is a big issue in terms of what's being served in school. Many schools have contracts, for example, about distributing certain kinds of sodas or making other kinds of foods available. And at a time when our schools are really pressed for cash, those things may seem very attractive. I think they are short-sighted and in the long run are going to hurt our youth. And that's exactly the kind of policy activity that really ought to be undertaken. Policies about that at the district level, perhaps even at the state level, can really make an enormous difference and affect a large number of kids.
Who shall I contact?
I think if you call my office, we can put you in touch with the folks who are working on the physical activity and nutrition group. If you come to our conference, or of course, if you're here in Multnomah County, the Multnomah County Health Department would also be a good place to start for all of those.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Gil Johnson, City Club member, and since I don't see Ray Polani here today, I'm going to ask the transportation question. I'm glad you both touched on the need to walk and ride your bicycle, and so what I'd like to see is some follow-up on that, on strategies of how to do that. I have a small business, which is a taekwondo school, and even though you get plenty of exercise doing that, I encourage my students to use alternate means of getting there simply by having lousy parking, and also by giving a good discount to students who join the Bicycle Transportation Alliance, which means they have to ride their bike. And people from the BTA are here. They're sponsoring a legislation for safe rides to school for children. I totally muffed that, but that's the thing. And so what I'm looking from Nike, there's a lot of people in City Club who run organizations, run businesses. What are some ideas? What do you guys do to get people out of their cars, get them walking and riding bicycles?
Okay, thank you. We actually have a number of different programs. We actually encourage carpooling every day, so we have a carpooling program for people. We have a Leave Your Car Behind Day every year to actually encourage people to walk. We obviously have an incredible campus, so for those of you who've been out to the campus, the facilities we have to encourage participation during the day. And then one of the things about that campus, if you work in one of the buildings, it probably takes you 10 minutes to get to one of your other buildings. So just in terms of our physical activity moving from building to building, you would get a fairly good workout every day just walking from building to building within that campus. Daryl down here, Daryl actually works on a bike program for kids, so he's worked in the city to help with our bike program for kids to just really give kids ownership of great modes of transportation. And then we actually sponsor Cycle Oregon, so we saw Jonathan and Stephen Gomez, some people in the room that do Cycle Oregon. So we're quite involved in the cycling and trying to get activity and make people aware and provide opportunities for people.
I guess I'd like to add, first of all, that what both of you have described are just great examples of how, even in your own immediate sphere of influence, you can really make a difference on some of these issues. But even more immediate than that are the things that each of us do individually. I'm an avid bicycle commuter, bike rider, and I think that's really important. The folks who work in my office see me with my bike helmet and biking to work and so forth. They listen to me get on my soapbox about it. And I think that if each of us were to do that sort of thing, it begins to have an effect that gains momentum.
I'm going to ask a question and then I have another one to read, but come on, questioners. What direction or how should we go legally, i.e. the tobacco industry and the lawsuits? I know there was something in the paper about McDonald's. There's a lawsuit against them for causing this obesity and the responsibility issues. So I'm just curious, is that happening out here? The ads on TV that make you want to get up and run and eat all that horrible fat food. I mean, when do we outlaw, like we did cigarette ads on TV?
I think that's a complicated question. The role of legal cases in preventing tobacco use has been a very effective tool in many ways for preventing tobacco use and raising awareness. Even when the cases themselves were not successful, it sort of made people stop and think, well, wait a minute, somebody's bringing a case about this. Maybe secondhand smoke really isn't something that we can ignore. So I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not an expert in this, nor in my current role would it be appropriate for me, even if I was, to be advocating this kind of an approach to things. But in the tobacco world, it certainly has been a successful tool. And I suspect that this lawsuit that was thrown out with regard to McDonald's, this is probably not the end of this legal strategy.
More questions? Because it's not a question that I have here. It's an invitation to all of you to please take the balls that are on the tables that were a gift from Nike and take them home or to kids or grandkids to help encourage our kids to be active. Now we have a question.
Hi, I'm Laurie Knightley, a member. I grew up in rural Maine, and I had the unpleasant experience a few years ago of returning there with my daughter, who measured the distance from the house to the school. And she allowed 5% for shrinkage, 5% for the snow as a resistance, and it was still shorter than I remembered. But I do want to say we never stopped moving. There was not, we will now be home, we will now go to the park for recreation. We were very, very physical all the time. And we had a safer environment to be out running all the time, leaving, whatnot. We didn't really have organized recreational programs. We also had a lot of responsibilities that were work in the house. And I brought my own children up that way. They had a lot of responsibilities, whether there was money for them or not. They learned to work, and that's not a bad thing for our young people to learn to do. Work at home, work and help other folk out that needed it. And the other variable, we never had food as a reward. My cooking, I assure you, is not a reward. And so if you did something special, no deal where food is concerned. And I do think those things matter. You know, you see your parents move, you see your father head out. He didn't know how to stroll. No, everything, if he went from the bedroom to the kitchen, it was destination.
Do you have a question?
Well, the question is how to incorporate movement, and I don't know that there's an answer in your everyday life instead of these structured. Everything is structured, and I think maybe there should be more examples. So,
I think it is a great point. I think sometimes we're looking for a solution that's very complex when sometimes it could be much more simple. So it really is incorporating that ability to move into each of the activities that we have the opportunity to do that during the day. We work with some Native American tribal leaders, and diabetes is their #1 health issue. And they believe they can prevent 50% of their adult onset by diabetes by increasing activity, simply 10%. And if you think about that, we know we can do that. We know we can move people from place to place differently to get that activity in during the day as opposed to having to go to a health club at the end of the day. So I think there are very simple solutions like that that can make a big difference.
Whitney Button, Lincoln High School Constitution team. I was wondering if you thought that you could attribute obesity to bad education, for example, in health classes, not emphasizing dietary needs enough. And in middle school even, I remember them emphasizing dietary education in 6th grade, and after that, it wasn't a problem. People ignored it, and I don't remember it being emphasized at all.
I think you bring up a good point in the sense that health education classes and other kinds of educational opportunities are tools that could potentially add to this. I would only caution that this isn't just a matter of knowledge. And it isn't just a matter of what's going to be addressed by knowing that you should or shouldn't be eating the way that you are or be inactive the way that you might be. We need to not only do that, you do need the knowledge, but you also need all of this environmental support and all of the environmental cues to make that behavior a reality and a desirable thing for you to do. We see that in all kinds of health outcomes, not just with obesity, but you name it, pretty much any kind of behavior change, that's really the key.
I think, is John Onishi here? John, so we have one of my background is in physical education. I think we can do that with physical education. I think one of the things we have to do is create physical education as a very important part of the curriculum in schools. And it has to be new physical education, really has to be challenging for kids. It has to teach lifetime skills. and the number of things that we're doing with kids today, teaching kids their heart rate, how to exercise with heart rate. It's not about competition. It's really about self-improvement and getting heart rate monitors. There's some incredible video games coming down the road where you literally have to interact and play dodgeball against the video game. That builds personal movement into the video games, and some very exciting things coming down the road that could help us break through the cycle.
Nan Newell, City Club member. It seems to me that one of the reasons that kids aren't getting as much exercise as they used to is a safety issue, with parents not feeling comfortable with their kids being outside or walking to school or biking to school for all kinds of reasons. And I was just wondering if there were any programs, or if you had considered any programs that really linked public safety together with children being able to be outside playing in the streets and on the sidewalks a lot more.
I think you bring up a very important point, and that is that safety issues are deeply intertwined with all of this. In the coalitions that I mentioned that are having their kickoff with the state plans in just a couple of weeks, injury prevention folks are deeply involved in all of those policy discussions and issues, because it doesn't make any sense to be telling parents they need to send their kids outside if the parents are afraid to do so. They think their children are going to be hurt or kidnapped or whatever. And that's the example that I gave from Multnomah County. This walking school bus concept kind of addresses both of those issues at the same time. You've got adults supervising these kids. At the same time, you've got the kids being more active. So we need to be creative about this and think up those kinds of solutions that address all of the barriers to being physically active.
Hi. My question's for Gary. I'm curious as to any thinking or conversations that has gone on at Nike with perhaps, say, a Nintendo, another really powerful brand that obviously markets to sort of a similar age group of kid. What kind of change you two together could create in addressing this issue?
It's a great question. I think, again, that is one of the roles that we feel we can play specifically in this subject. And we do have partnerships going. We have a partnership with Philips, and we are exploring other partnerships. And again, part of what is coming is the virtual gaming world. And we believe we can use virtual gaming to incorporate physical activity and exercise and sport into virtual gaming. So we take gaming from a really passive, sedentary activity to a very active activity. We know that's really something that kids love and that kids spend a lot of time on. If we could create that for kids, it could really, that's one of the things that really could make a difference, and we are actually working on that.
Hi, Susan Bender-Phelps. I'm a guest today. Has anyone done, or is anyone doing research on, we've got all these obese kids, how many of them are being treated with psychotropic medication? We know that more and more kids are being drugged for ADD, ADHD, and we also know that those drugs cause obesity in the people who take them.
I'm not sure I can answer your question fully, which I suppose is an answer to your question that I don't really know the answer. We do know that we have seen an enormous increase in the use of psychotropic drugs in kids. And as you say, some of those drugs do have obesity as a side effect. That certainly may be contributing to this epidemic, but I don't think we can attribute that as the only cause or even the major cause here. But that is something of concern. One of the side effects of exercise, if you will, and side effects we usually think of as a negative thing, but it's actually quite an effective treatment for depression, for people with mild depression anyway. And can be a really effective way of helping kids deal with some of those problems. So that's yet another argument for getting kids out there and being physically active, is hopefully we can avoid some of those depressed kids.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Frost. I'm with the Bicycle Transportation Alliance and a guest. And I would like to tell everybody that the Bicycle Transportation Alliance is in a wonderful partnership with the City of Portland and the Oregon Health Division and many other players to promote some legislation called Safe Routes to School. And as Dr. Kohn has mentioned, Safe Routes to School is a buzzword now. It's an international and national movement to create safer communities so that kids can walk and bike to school. And when we get more kids and adults out there on the streets, then we won't have that problem of our fear of stranger danger and children being unsafe just from those crazy people that we advocate the streets to because we're in our cars. So my question is then for you, how can we organize everybody in this room to be behind our legislation to make sure that we can have a pot of money for improving facilities and also for educating children about how to bicycle to school?
I think you've probably done the best job. Truly, I think the message here is to be involved personally, and you've obviously made a difference already in terms of creating a program that's successful in terms of giving kids a way to get to school safely. So I think the most powerful thing, again, is individuals coming together and collectively sharing our opinions, and I do think we will create a different dialogue. And I think that dialogue will create change. So I think the greatest thing we can do is be out. I think you can be vocal. I think you can be active. And we actually have, I mean, it's probably easier for us in that sense where we have the connections in the State House, and we have a regular group that's always working on issues and conversations with the State House. So it's easier for us to make those connections. It's certainly always part of our agenda to have that. And actually the governor was very kind. It came actually 2 weeks ago. He was out on campus and just having a conversation similar to this in terms of issues the state is facing, issues that we have. So he's actually been great and very open to that. So I think we have great possibility there. Thank you.
I think the forum that I mentioned on September 11th, again, is another opportunity to do some. And I know BTA has been involved in those coalitions, and I think it's another opportunity to rally some folks to the cause.
Well, we've all heard from both our speakers that this is a challenge and a call to action, and all of us today can hear that and do something and grasp it. It's interesting that we have, as I said earlier, Portland Parks and Recreation, a huge player, the Bicycle Transportation Alliance, a huge player, county health, state health, all represented here. So we really are in a position to take this on, and it is hugely serious. All those statistics really did shock. With that, we have a few minutes extra that we're closing early today, so all of us can go out and walk around the block. City Club is adjourned.
Thank you.